Okay, let's unpack this. We're taking a deep dive into a recent, pretty critical event, one that quite literally brought global air travel to a sudden halt in a major region. Our mission today really is to understand that rapid chain of events, the immediate impact, especially on a major airline like Qatar Airways, and then those wider ripple effects across the globe. You've given us this comprehensive report detailing their operations following missile strikes in the region, and it's a vivid illustration of how quickly things can shift, in our interconnected world. So maybe let's start with the trigger event itself. June 23rd, 2025. Qatar's Civil Aviation Authority takes this huge step, closing its entire airspace.
As a precaution, right?
That's right. A precaution during Iran's retaliatory missile launch.
Right.
Targeting the U.S. Udeid Air Base there in Qatar.
Yeah.
And what's really striking here is how quickly the dominoes fell after that initial closure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Major Gulf neighbors, UAE, Kuwait, Bahrain, Iraq, they followed suit almost immediately, grounding flights, rerouting others. It became a regional shutdown, like instantly.
Right.
Wow. And the direct hit for Qatar Airways was just immediate suspension.
Total suspension. And think about this. Over 100 inbound flights had to divert.
100 flights. Can you just imagine being on one of those planes, coming from, say, Oslo or Dublin, Gatwick, and suddenly you're turning back mid-route, diverting to Riyadh or Istanbul, Zurich maybe?
Yeah.
Must have been, chaos on board.
Absolute chaotic for passengers, yes. Even with the airline stressing, that safety for crew and passengers was their absolute top priority, which of course it has to be.
Of course.
And it's important to understand the context of that threat too.
Yeah.
Iran launched about 6 missiles, short and medium-range ballistic missiles.
Okay.
It was framed as symbolic retaliation for earlier U.S. strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities, Operation Midnight Hammer, as it was apparently dubbed.
I remember that name. Suggests precision.
It does, but despite the alarming nature of launching ballistic missiles, Qatar's air defenses actually intercepted them all successfully.
Okay, so they didn't hit.
No. U.S. officials confirmed no missiles struck the base, 0 casualties reported. Doha, Qatar's capital, quickly denounced it, called it a blatant violation of its sovereignty.
So the defenses worked, which is a massive relief, obviously. But does the attempt itself, even failing, signal a sort of heightened risk now for aviation in that vital region?
Well, that's the key question, isn't it?
And what was the actual operational fallout for Qatar Airways?
Yeah.
Beyond just those initial diversions?
Yeah, it was significant because for an airline like Qatar Airways, their whole business model relies on that hub-and-spoke strategy through Hamad International and Doha.
Right, everything flows through there.
Exactly. So when that hub is effectively unusable, even temporarily, the impact is huge. All those diversions meant much longer routes, obviously higher fuel costs, and just massive logistical headaches. Flights had to reroute around Iranian, Iraqi, and Saudi airspace in some cases, adding hours, adding costs.
Hours.
It really exposes a vulnerability, For airlines so reliant on one central hub in a potentially volatile area, regional instability can just bring the whole system to a grinding halt.
That's a tough picture for the airline. But zooming out a bit, what about the wider world, the geopolitical side? How did everyone else react?
Well, beyond the immediate airline chaos, this definitely sent shivers through global markets. You saw de-escalation calls pretty quickly from France, the UK, China, Saudi Arabia.
Okay.
And oil markets got particularly anxious. Worries about the Strait of Hormuz potentially closing, that vital shipping lane.
Always the worry there.
Always. And here's a telling detail. Qatar Airways CEO actually had to skip the Paris Air Show, a huge industry event, to manage this crisis back home.
Wow.
Yeah, and this was right after they just won the Skytrax World's Best Airline Award. Talk about timing. It just underscores how a sort of contained regional flare-up can ripple out globally, financially, logistically.
Right across the board. So where does this leave things now? What comes next for air travel for you listening?
Well, the immediate thing is the reopening of airspace. That totally depends on ongoing defense assessments. But even once it's open, you can expect knock-on effects, systemic delays, refunds, rebookings, a real strain on airline staff trying to get schedules back to normal. It takes time.
It's not just flipping the switch.
Not at all. And looking bigger picture, if geopolitical volatility continues or escalates, especially around places like Hormuz, well, we could see this happen again. New airspace closures, more ripple effects for global travel, for energy markets. It affects everyone.
Yeah. This whole deep dive looking at Qatar Airways and this interruption.
Yeah.
It really highlights how fast things can unravel, doesn't it? A geopolitical event, even one where defenses hold up, missiles miss. It can still disrupt global systems almost instantly.
Underscores the fragility, the interconnectedness.
Exactly. It reminds you how quickly something happening thousands of miles away can suddenly impact, your next flight booking or even the price you pay for fuel.
It really does.
It just makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many other threads, unseen connections, link these seemingly distant events right back to our daily lives?